Why do you believe podcasting is such a powerful medium for building authority and connection?
Yeah, because here's the deal, brother. And I love that you talked about the events that you didn't want to do playing golf with clients. Um, because well, number one, that's not for everybody. And number two, when is the only time in your life that you are personally invited into your ideal clients, prospects, and centers of influence, quiet time without being creepy? Podcasting, because when do people listen to podcasts? When they're alone in their car, when they're exercising, when they're getting ready, when they're cooking, right? All of those things is when people consume podcasts, and they're inviting you into their life. And here's the other thing, just go brass tacks in financial services hardcore here. Ready?
Mm.
According to YChart, 75% of your clients are ready to leave you. And the number one reason they're ready to leave you is because you don't communicate effectively with them, because you're sending them crappy canned communication that they're getting from their other five advisors, which, by the way, most of your clients have another advisor, whether you like it or not. Right. And so you have to communicate, and you have to make it intimate, portable, and relatable. And podcasting solves all of those three hands down.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, a broker dealer member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
Welcome to Money Matters with Chris Hensley, where we spotlight financial literacy issues in the Houston community and beyond. And now your host, Chris Hensley.
There are a ton of books out there about podcasting, some good, some not so great. But when it comes to the art of interviewing, only a handful truly stand out. And today I'm talking with the author of one of them. Matt Halloran is not just one of the best podcast coaches in the game, he's a storyteller, a speaker, and now the author of Shut the F Up and Listen. His book isn't just about talking, it's about the lost art of truly listening and how mastering this one skill can make you a better podcast host, a better communicator, and even better leader. But here's the kicker. There's one common mistake that nearly every podcaster makes when interviewing guests, and it could be the difference between a forgettable show and a podcast that people can't stop listening to. We're going to break that down today, along with Matt's expert insights on how to run an engaging podcast, build deeper connections with your audience, and stand out in a crowded space. Stick with me until the very end because Matt is dropping some game-changing advice that could take your podcast to the next level. Let's dive in. Matt, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me, dude. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I am very excited to have you on the show. I just to kind of share this with listeners. You were one of my first interviews on the other side of the microphone. So after, I've been doing podcasting for over a decade now, and I'm used to the interviewing side of it. But you interviewed me, I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago, on a different podcast, and it was a great experience. And so this new book that you have, I read that right away and I loved it. It's going to be on my top list of books to suggest to people on the interviewing part of it for sure. So let's dive right in. So tell me about your book, Shut the F Up and Listen. Love the title, but has a bold and intriguing title. What was the inspiration behind writing this book, and what core message do you hope readers to take away from?
So the reason why I wrote it is because I've done over 3,000 interviews, and about 1,500 of them are actually podcasts. And what I just kept finding was the best shows I didn't say very much. And then I'd be done in the guy because, as you do, I always ask my guests, how did the show go? What can I do better? All of that stuff because, I'm a student of the game. And almost every time they would say to me, dude, that was the best show I've ever been on. I really feel like you were listening to me. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I just, rewinded my life, right, on the different sorts of milestones that have happened. I helped create a communications, holistic financial planning, a 3-day workshop for Ron Carson's Peak Coaching Company, which is what it used to be. He now goes by Omani, but so that was many, many years ago. My first article in Horse's Mouth magazine in 2007 was on the importance of communication. And I really think what this is the big takeaway I want for your audience is, as a host, right? Or even as a leader, as a person in a relationship, most of us listen to respond. We don't listen to just listen. And I know that sounds hyper simplistic, but it's not, because it's actually really hard to do. And that's why I've exercises in the book to help train you how to do it. So that's the onus of the book. And that's really what I want people to get from the book.
Fantastic. Yeah, this is, as some of the things that you just shared with us for financial advisors, there's going to be other podcasters that are listening to this as well. But for financial advisor, Horse's Mouth, 2007 being published back then, I'm here. And then Ron Carson, what used to be, well, I tried into it or tested in the trenches. And
That's
so
in the trenches.
the current version of this, 20 years ago, when I started doing this, they told me, you have to go out and golf with your clients. And guess what? I was one of those kids that got picked last. That sounded horrible. So the idea of podcasting as a medium to market and to really connect with people, I think is fantastic there. Now you argue in the book that listening, not talking, is the key to solving the world's problems. Can you share a moment in your life when you realized the power of truly listening?
Yeah. So I went and studied with a guy named George Kinder, who's the father of holistic financial planning. And it was the first time I was away from my wife. We had been married for quite a while at that point. My twins were about 4 years old. So it was a very busy, stressful time in our life. And I was going to be gone in Colorado for a week. And this was a big, difficult time for my wife. So I called her every day, man. Every day, hey, how you doing? I talk to my kids every day. I try to be a good dad and good husband.
Yeah.
And I learned all about listening through George Kinder and how he just really helped me understand really how to use it in the world of financial services to really truly connect with your clients. But then I realized, oh my God, this is so much bigger than that. And so anyway, I fly back and I get home after dark. My kids are already in bed. I go down and I kiss them. They still slept in the same rooms at that time, because, twins. And so I was like, hey, honey, I want to spend some time with you. So we went out on the back porch. We had built this brick patio. I lived in an old church that we turned into our home. And so we walked out the back door and we're sitting there. We lit a fire in the fire pit. And I said, tell me about your week. Now, mind you, keep in mind, I talked to her every single solitary day. Here's the deal. I used the techniques that I learned at Kinder specifically. And by the way, I also have my master's degree as a therapist. And so there's some extra training there. But 2.5 hours passed. And my wife goes at the end, hey, I'm getting really tired. Let's go inside. I was like, yeah, I'm getting pooped too. And so she goes and reaches for the handle on the back door. And as she's turning it, she turns around, she looks at me, she goes, what the hell happened to you in Estes Park? That was the best conversation we've had in a long time. I didn't say anything. I said, oh, okay, tell me more. I mean, very, very little minor statements, because it changed our relationship, dude. I've been married for 25 years, right? I know this woman better than I think I know anybody, but I do this all the time. I just try to stay in the moment instead of, oh, I want to say this. Oh my God, you just said this and I want you to know that I'm listening. No, the best way to show people that you're listening is to just shut up.
I love it. I love it. The preface, so share this with your wife. The preface of the book that she did, I played that for my wife, and I've been married for 30 years. I was like, man, this is really good stuff. I know, like, I came to this for a podcasting book, but I got sort of a relationship stuff out of it as well. And we thought that was really helpful. So I put that as an asterisk for listeners who are going to get the book there. Let's talk about just podcasting. You've coached some of the best podcasters in the industry. Why do you believe podcasting is such a powerful medium for building authority and connection?
Yeah, because here's the deal, brother. And I love that you talked about the events that you didn't want to do, playing golf with clients. Because number one, that's not for everybody. And number two, when is the only time in your life that you are personally invited into your ideal clients, prospects, and centers of influence, quiet time without being creepy. Podcasting, because when do people listen to podcasts? When they're alone in their car, when they're exercising, when they're getting ready, when they're cooking, right? All of those things is when people consume podcasts, and they're inviting you into their life. And here's the other thing, just go brass tacks in financial services hardcore here. Ready?
Mhm.
According to YChart, 75% of your clients are ready to leave you. And the number one reason they're ready to leave you is because you don't communicate effectively with them, because you're sending them crappy canned communication that they're getting from their other 5 advisors, which, by the way, most of your clients have another advisor, whether you like it or not. Right. And so you have to communicate, and you have to make it intimate, portable, and relatable. And podcasting solves all of those three, hands down.
I love it. I love it. The statistics that you use from Y chart, that 75%. I picture this little person on the shoulder just whispering in their ear, hey, come over to this,
That's
the
right.
dark side, to that other advisor, right? So good, very good information, and being able to connect really on demand. Um, what about podcasting for business growth for
Oh, yeah.
entrepreneurs and professionals? How can a podcast serve as a powerful tool for personal branding and business growth?
The unintended consequences of what Kirk and I built. So Kirk Lowe is my business partner. He's the co-founder along with me, with Proudmouth specifically. We really built this as a bespoke client community, custom content client creation, or custom content client communication tool. That's what we built Proudmouth for. And then all of a sudden, since we built our entire business off our Proudmouth, multi-million dollar, we've done 8,500 episodes and over 150,000 social media posts for financial advisors, what we do all day, every day. We built it off the podcast. We're like, okay, let's see if it's replicatable for advisors. There's 5 ways that you use this to make money. Okay. Number one is the actual content that you create has value. It's like art, right? You don't walk by art in your office and yell at your art and say, you haven't brought me in a new client today. You don't do that, right? Number
Right.
2, getting a greater share of wallet from existing clients. If you do this correctly, you are going to absolutely get more business from existing clients, because you don't have all of your clients' money. I'm sorry, you don't. If you think you do, you're wrong. There's studies upon studies upon studies that say that you don't. So that's number 2. Number 3, it's easier to refer somebody to a podcast than call my guy. So when we first started this, I met with a really good friend of mine who is actually more of a mentor, Bill Cates. He was the referral coach. And I said, hey, dude, this is what Kirk and I are talking about. And he's like, dude, that makes referrals so much easier. So that's number 3. Number 4 is also, if you follow the strategy we built with our 9 podcast growth tactics at Proudmouth, centers of influence. So let's just talk about what you and I are doing right now, right? You are going to get access to my entire 100,000 person audience because you asked me to be on your show. Of course, I'm going to promote this. What are you freaking kidding me? You're awesome. I love you. You're a great podcaster. I'm going to tell everybody about this. You're going to go in my newsletter and my email and social media posts, all of that stuff, right? If you do it with estate planning attorneys, CPAs, divorce attorneys, real estate agents, whoever else your centers of influence are, if you do it well, they're going to share it, and you're going to get access to that whole new network, which is going to get you number 5, which is net new business. So many advisors have their marketing in a silo. Sorry, this is a long explanation. Just give me a
No,
moment
this is
then.
good.
Okay. So I'll tell you another quick story. So we had an advisor in Minnesota who does a lot of estate planning workshops, like seminars, dinner, rubber chicken, that sort of thing. And he's been doing it for years and years and years and years, 10, 15 years. And so then he started doing his podcast about 3 years ago. And about 18 months in, he brought an estate planning attorney on. And the estate planning attorney was the one he used to do these events with many moons ago. And he was talking to her, and she's like, I have a whole drawer full of drawers, plural, full of trusts that have been signed, I've been paid on, I know aren't funded. And so he wisely said, well, what should you do? And she said, well, they should probably call you to help you. You're the advisor, you help them fund it. Dude, his phone started ringing. And the best one was this woman who called and said, I went to one of your estate planning workshops 5 years ago. I just heard this podcast. Now I haven't really been ready to work with you, life, blah, blah, blah. I'd like to go ahead and sit down and talk. And he's like, wow, that's fantastic. well, do you know about us? And she's like, yeah, I know your account minimums, all that stuff. I've been kind of, stalking you for years, right? For,
Yep.
kind of, lurking, as we call it on social. She came in, she had $4 million.
Wow.
And so this is the sort of stuff, and now that is not an outlier. That happens by using podcasting to truly build your business. But here's the deal. You have to have a plan, you have to have a strategy, and you have to be consistent. If you do those three things, this can make as much money for you as any other sort of marketing.
So, we're talking, and this is going to really resonate for advisors because we're in that space. We're talking about this, but I'm going to go back to the book because you dive into some of those mistakes that we make as interviewers, right? What are some of the biggest mistakes people make in conversations that prevent meaningful connections?
Yeah. Well, let's get back to the foundation of what we started this with, which is, learning how to listen, not listen to respond. So here's what ends up happening. This is the biggest mistake everybody makes in client meetings, prospect meetings, dating, your wife, your husband, whatever, your kids, is they'll say something that you want to respond to. So let's say I ask you a question and, a minute and a half into me answering or you answering the question, I hear something I want to talk about. But you keep talking for another 2 minutes. I'm not listening anymore, dude, because I'm so pointed. My brain can't hold those two things at the same time. Um, that's the biggest flipping mistake, right? And so how do you solve that? Well, the first way you solve is an old therapeutic technique. And I can't stress this enough. This is one of the greatest things. And all of you who've ever been to therapy, you've seen your therapist do this. You have a piece of paper. Right. And so as they're talking, you just go ahead and you're going to break eye contact and you're going to make yourself a note. Then you take your pen, you put it down and you recenter. Because what happened was, and we know this cognitively, yeah, brother,
Yeah.
we know this cognitively, that if I write it down, my brain knows that the placeholder has been made. Now I can continue to focus. And then here's the best part about this whole thing is they get done with their 3-minute discussion. You look back at what you wrote down and you realize, well, shit, they already answered that question already. Yeah, they did. Because guess what? You shut up and let them keep going, right? And then you are present. So one of my favorite chapters in the book, which seemed almost like a throwaway, which isn't, is my podcasting and interviewing heroes. And one of them was a guy named Larry King. And Larry King did, like, I don't remember what it was, 50,000 interviews or something in his day. And what he always used to do is he would come into all interviews like a child. Like, and it actually pissed some people off. Jerry Seinfeld very famously got very angry with him. But I love that. So I go in prepared but open, right? And so all of my interviews, all I'm trying to do is I want to know you and what you know. Because here's the deal. We did 500 episodes of the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast, right? Every one of those episodes, regardless if I had another marketing person who was talking about niches or another coach talking about the power of coaching and mindset, I always was able to find something to learn. And I think that that's another really big thing about listening is you don't learn anything by talking.
I love that. I love that. Really, really good stuff here for listeners today. Matt, for people who want to get the book, what is the best way for them to access it?
Oh yeah, just go to Amazon. You can get the hardcover, paperback, or audiobook on Amazon.com. You have to put "Shut the F Up and Listen" book, because if not, you're going to get all of the other swear word books out there. So that's really the best place to go. Or they can, follow me on LinkedIn. I'm actually, a bunch of my friends now are posting about the book. So there's more and more opportunities. And, listening isn't just for podcasting, which, by the way, the book is really fantastic for podcasting. If you just learn how to listen and not listen to respond, every relationship that you have will be better.
There's powerful information there for listeners. These are gold nuggets. You're giving us very actionable tips from the book, but then just things that are going to help us in life along the way. I'm literally sitting here as you were talking about the piece of paper, and it's okay. All right, I better stop. it's hard to do this interview when I'm like, "All right, I'm being self-conscious here," but I've got my pen here. I do wanna take a moment before we go any further, and I wanna share a funny, story with listeners here because this has to do with, your social media, because I've been following you since you interviewed me, many years past, and somewhere along the way, you grew this big bushy beard here, right? And so we were at Future Proof, and you know how big, and for listeners who don't know what Future Proof is, it's this giant festival that takes place every year for financial advisors and fintech. And in the crowd, I was sitting there, kind of a little worn down. My energy levels were low, and I was people watching, right? And then I see this big bushy beard, and it triggered I was like, okay, now who is this? I know this person. No, it's not Rick Rubin. It's not Andrew Will. David Letterman. No, I don't think he's going to be here. And then I was like, I know who this is. This is Matt Halloran. And so I looked it up on LinkedIn, and you had just posted a picture, like maybe 200 feet down the road, you took a
Mhm.
picture of it. So this is a really long way of saying you attended Future Proof last year. What did you think about that experience? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, best conference I've ever been to, bro. And I do a lot of conferences, and I average about 10 conferences a year, whether I'm speaking or we're sponsoring or whatever I'm attending. Um, So they did everything right. Well, there's a couple things they didn't do right, like there wasn't enough food in the bathrooms. They needed more bathrooms just because there were just so many people. But their speed dating thing is brilliant.
Oh yeah,
It's double opt-in, bro. Right. So that's
yeah,
the crazy part. So I reach out to you and say, hey, I want to talk to you for this reason. You have to accept and reciprocate that. So when you're sitting down with people, I did 26 dates, dude. And I think it opened up 4 humongous doors for Proudmouth. Like, doors that I never would have been able to open with just calls or emails or whatever, right? It's that face to face. The other thing is really loud. And
yes,
that's, as I continue to get older, it's really loud in those tents. But the content was amazing. The after party stuff was amazing. It was just a fun celebration. I even think the vendor booths were better because they didn't allow you to have tripe, like they allowed that you had to have something valuable to give. Best. So I'm doing Future Proof Miami next month, 2 months, next month,
yeah.
2 months. Um, and we're probably doing retreat, and I'm probably doing, well, no, I'm already booked for Huntington Beach. So
I love it.
I'm doing all 3 this year because it's the best of the best.
I love it. Yeah, that was my experience too. It's very rare to get me out of the office these days. And on the other hand, that is, what a great way to get some continuing ed. And the networking thing was just tremendous. Can't say any more positive things for Future Proof. And it got us to connect again. So when your book published, and I saw, I was like, okay, I got to reach out to Matt again. Good. So we're heading towards the end of the show here. One of the things you do talk about is storytelling. How important is storytelling in podcasting, and what can hosts do to become better storytellers?
We have something called the perfect content formula here at Proudmouth, which is storytelling, education, entertainment, call to action. And every good podcast has to have all 4 of those things in 30 minutes. And I have been doing that through this show. I will tell you a story about a client or a story about something in my life. That is, so let's just rewind 10,000 years, and think about the fact that we used to sit around fires cooking our meat and telling stories about the hunt, right? We've been doing this as a species forever. Right? How were all religious doctrines passed down? Storytelling. And in storytelling, this is where you get to go ahead and share a little bit about yourself because that's why your clients are working with you anyway. Yeah, are you an expert? Are you a great financial planner? Blah, blah, blah. Yes, all of those things are true. That's table stakes now. What is really the reason they're doing business with you is because they like, know, and trust you, and you have things in common. So, one of the best things that you can do in telling a story is make the story about somebody else. And I love this for advisors. So you're creating content and honestly, if so, listen to listen, not listen to respond is the first piece that I want to give. But here's the other big thing that I want all of your audience to know. And for those of you who are watching, you'll see I'm using a prop here. For those of you who are just listening, I'm holding up my phone. When you get done with a client meeting, grab your phone and do this. hit record. I was just in a client meeting, and here's the 3 things that we talked about today that really made an impact. That's
Nice.
you're ever gonna create, dude. And you're gonna do it because you're fresh and in the moment, and it's just a selfie, and you're gonna do this. Compliance is gonna approve it because you're not giving investment advice or whatever, right? It's just talking about the client experience, which is what your marketing should be about anyway. So many people, especially advisors, they just overthink it, bro. They overthink it so hard, and it's that sort of in the moment. I was just at a conference last week in DC at a NAFA conference. By the way, NAFA's on a tearing comeback, by the way. Their
Nice.
conferences are kick ass now, dude. Anyway, so I'm at an NAFA conference in DC. Somebody said something on stage I just flat out didn't agree with. And in fact, somebody I respect a lot. I've known him for, well, almost 20 years now. And so I walked into another room, and it was a terribly shot. It was terribly lit. I didn't have a microphone on. I'm kind of an audiophile. And I just shot this video. 3,000 impressions.
Wow.
For a
Wow.
60-second video, right? And it was just because I was arguing that this guy didn't know what a niche was, right? And so that's the sort of stuff, that live, organic, real you content is what you need. And stories help. Just people love hearing stories. It brings their guard down. It brings your guests' guard down on a podcast, but more importantly, it brings your clients' guard down because they want to know who you are, and that's why storytelling is so important.
I love it. I love it. Matt, we could sit here and talk all day. I've got a philosophy background. In the book, you talk about the bioethics and that whole background. So we could do a whole show just on those things, but I have to be picky. So let me get one last one in here before we bump the into the show here. A lot of podcasters struggle with audience growth. What are your top strategies for getting more listeners and keeping them engaged?
Yeah, well, first off, we have to level set expectations. You're never going to be the next Joe Rogan. You're never going to be the next Color Daddy. So just stop it. You're probably never going to get over 1,000 views for your podcast or listens for your podcast. It's okay, right? So, but how do you actually really increase that? The best way to increase it is to, surprisingly enough, use Google. Now, this is going to be crazy that you might not. So what you're going to do is you're going to ask Google a question. Now, you can do this with ChatGPT or whatever AI you might be using, but I use Google for this specifically. And I will say, what are the top 10 questions my ideal target market is asking you about financial services? Enter. So here's the thing. So it's going to create an AI generated response. That's good information. But what you do is you scroll down until you see people also asked. What that's telling you is that's where content gaps are. And so that's what you're going to start podcasting about. It's usually 6 to 9 answers there or questions there. There are your next podcast topics. That's the title of your next show, because then the internet, which by the way is listening, knows that you're talking about what they need you to talk about, and they're going to go ahead and promote and prefer your information. You also look at what you wrote at the top, right? So what the AI generated response is, and that's what you're going to make sure that is in your description of your show. You make these little adjustments. So one of the clients in our Sonic Boom coaching program, he had 30 times the downloads to his latest episode when he did that strategy specifically. I had another guy who used the same sort of strategy and got 3,000% increase on his LinkedIn impressions by just doing what the internet tells you is what your ideal clients want. Because guess what? It knows.
I love it. I love it. Matt, we are right here at the end of this show, and I have tried to practice shutting the F up and keeping my pen here. And I think we had a fantastic interview today, and I think people will get a lot of good information from this. I would encourage them to read the book or download the Audible. That's what I did. I like to play that at 1.25, play it real fast so I can get through everything there. We're going to have in the podcast notes a link for people to get access to that. But again, Matt, how do they find the book if they want to get access to it?
Yep. So just go to Amazon.com and in the search bar, type "Shut the F Up" and listen book. The other thing is follow me on LinkedIn. And if you want to know more about Proudmouth specifically, just go to proudmouth.com.
Matt, is there anything I forgot to ask you today that you'd like to share with listeners?
No, dude, but I can't wait to have you back on. So we're retooling. So the Top Advisor Marketing podcast is done. We actually closed the door on that. And our new podcast is called Rise Above the Noise. And you are going to be one of the people who's going to be probably one of the first 20 guests because you have successfully risen above the noise, right? This is exactly who you are, what you do. Your podcast is killing it. Your content's killing it. You're doing a great job. I want to make sure that we highlight you on the new show. So everybody needs to stay tuned because you're going to be seeing this guy on our show here relatively soon.
All right. So instead of saying bye, I'm going to say to be continued. Matt, thank you so much for being on the show. Have a good rest of the day there.
Thanks, man.